Welcome to another episode of Unscripted with Marilyn Morales. Today's episode is brought to you by Izzy's Legacy Incorporated. It's our new nonprofit organization that we just started. We are so excited about it. It is going to help so many people. As my viewers know, the purpose of everything that I do is to bring attention to the disparity within the National Bone Marrow Registry. So that nonprofit is going to help deal with that specific issue, as well as bless those financially who are on a cancer journey. So please visit izzyslegacyinc.org so that you can learn more about that. Let's talk about my guest today. Matthew Brackett is my guest for today. He is the 10th of 13 children from a small town in New England. Listen, as a Latina, I know how that is. My dad happened to be number 20 of 20 children. So big families, I know a lot about. With 30 plus years of experience in the field of personal and professional leadership, education, and development, Matthew held leadership, educational, and consulting roles, listen to this, in Italy, Ireland, England, Colombia, Chile, and Mexico, as well as serving as a special staff officer and chaplain in the United States Navy. So Matthew, thank you for your service. As a frequent podcast guest, Matthew leverages his heart-centered care for thousands, his ample familiarity with complex global organizations, broad intercultural experience, and varying postgraduate degrees in human development and leadership in a uniquely insightful manner. His candid, sincere, and vulnerable approach to your show will offer an enriching blend of experience, education, and inspiration. Let's welcome Matthew to the show. Good morning.
Thank you, Marilyn. Good morning. Great to see you. Thank you for allowing me to share the microphone with you.
Of course. Listen, thank you so much for agreeing to come on and have a conversation with me this morning. Your experience is like none other. Right? So many things. Again, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
As well. And I mean, you've been everywhere.
Yes.
You have literally.
I feel very fortunate as I look back on all my experience. And whilst going through some things, I didn't feel as fortunate, but as I look back now, having all those experiences, I've never made it to Asia, which is unfortunate. But in a lot of my experience, I've been able to deal with people from all of the continents. And I feel very privileged.
Yeah, absolutely. And guess what? It's not over. Asia may still be there. It's still there. It's on the bucket list, right?
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about this. We had the pleasure of having a conversation recently, and I was just in awe with things that you were sharing. And I can say, stop, because I want some of this for the show, right? I don't want to hear any more. So I don't know a lot about you. I know a little bit about you, and what I hear is great. Do you think that in those roles that you were in, that being the 10th of 13 children helped you in those roles?
Yes, my first answer is yes. And I'll expound on that. Growing up as a 10th of 13 children, then with my parents, we were taught, I think just through osmosis, to have a very big and generous heart. Because you have to, it's a team effort.
Got to share everything, right?
Share everything. You have to also learn to stand up for yourself. But actually, my family, everyone, that's very peaceful. Actually, fighting wasn't really a thing. In our family. So there was a lot of sharing, sharing the tasks. Everyone from a very early age, we had to be responsible for our things because no one else was going to do it for you, right? And and whether it was assignments, whether it was tasks in the house, my parents, they wanted to give their children a space where they could use their creativity. So they bought a house in the countryside, where there was a lot of field, it's not massive, but I'm talking about 3 or 4 acres, but where we could use our creativity to have fun and to play outside and to do all kinds of things, and where we could invite our cousins and our friends to share time with us. So, and they always loved it because it was like an amusement park with all the different, at a young age, with all the different fun things that you could do outside or in the barn that we had. And my parents, they got animals at a young age for us so that we could learn responsibility. Not that we did it. It was not like we lived on a farm, but they wanted us to learn how to care and how to have responsibility and be educated as we grew. So, and part of that as well in education was that generous heart that my parents not only shared our house with their children, but also with relatives, friends that were going through hard times. So there was always someone from the outside that was spending time with us because they were going through a rough patch. And through that, my parents taught us great generosity.
Absolutely. I think big families, that's a big thing. That's a big thing. And I remember like I mentioned, my father was the last of 20, right? And all natural, right? My grandmother, some twins in there, but definitely. And growing up on a farm, because they did have a farm and they did have a store. So they did have a business that all the children had to be a part of, especially him being the youngest. His older brothers went off to war. So he was pulled from school so that he could help at home. So unfortunately, he didn't graduate from high school because of it, because he had to help in the time of war to be able to do that. But definitely, I remember visiting Puerto Rico, and I myself was born in Brooklyn, New York. Very different experience. And as you mentioned, being able to go outside, even at 2-3 acres, I would have loved 2-3 acres of land, because I grew up in the projects of Brooklyn. Right. So we were kept indoors because of the danger that laid out right in front of our doors. So we had to use our creativity, 4 of us, inside because of the dangers that were outside.
Wow.
But still.
Right. So, but going back to your question, is that part of it was the generosity. Part of it, my mother was the child of Italian immigrants, was the daughter of Italian immigrants, and she just had a very big heart, and she exposed us to so many things. She was very intentional about what we had exposure to, which helped me on the global stage of that intercultural interaction, the openness, the curiosity, the interest in others. So I think that helped a lot. And then one aspect, it doesn't come out so clearly in the bio, but I was in formal ministry for a good number of years. And that's where the whole thing about service and generosity and making a difference in people's lives really had a big play in myself and in many of my siblings.
Right. That's fantastic. Now, one thing about my show is that I like to get into you, right?
Yes.
And some challenge that you had in your life, and some tips and tools on how you were able to deal with that and come on the other side of that challenge. Can you share with my viewers a time in your life when you felt that way?
Yes. There's a few. But the biggest challenge among many, the biggest challenge I had to face was making the difficult decision to leave formal ministry. I was a Catholic priest for 20 years in active ministry as a Catholic priest. And then there's 10 years of training and education for that. So that's a total of 30 years.
Wow.
And I was sitting, for a good number of years, I was sitting in a place of internal discord and discontent and confusion, and really crisis around my identity. And it led to, part of it was feeling stuck because I had made a huge life decision and a commitment to this lifestyle and the service. And in that also culturally, it means a lot.
Yeah.
And not only for me, but it meant a lot for a lot of people.
Your mother especially, right? And she came from Italy, right? Where the Vatican is from.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, good. And so there's many levels to that decision. But I sat in that space for a good number of years of trying to navigate and figure it. But it was a very dark place to be, because it wasn't working, but I was trying to make it work.
Right.
And with all the best of intentions, but at the same time, I think I was doing myself a lot of damage in the process. So there's many sides to this challenge.
Right.
And part of it was having to make a decision between two good things, because ministry is a beautiful and it's a good thing, but also not being in ministry is also a good thing. right, and trying to do what was right. And so I was really conflicted. And then there's this culturally, am I turning my back on people? Am I turning my back on God? Am I a traitor?
Yeah.
And a lot of, so theologically, psychologically, mentally, socially, emotionally, there's so many elements to the decision, at least for me. So when I big decisions, I usually take them very slowly. And so I took this one very slowly. And it felt part of it. And then there's another element to this is I think I also, self-care was not a thing.
Okay.
Because sometimes it was equalized as selfish, right? Which is an erroneous equation, but that's sort of had a lot to do with my upbringing and with the faith circles. And so I didn't know how to take care of myself. And so there was also a level of burnout in the process of really,
Right.
I was overtasked, overworking myself. And in the care business, this is very common.
Absolutely. I'm a nurse. I know exactly how
Right.
that is. Yeah.
So there was this, and then there was this internal process that a lot of
Conflict.
people didn't. And then I didn't know how to share it. I was in a lot of leadership roles. So that's also can be a lonely place because you have to put on, not only in ministry, but when you have leadership roles in ministry, then there's this facade that you have to put on that you have it all together.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
I didn't have, and then I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to name it, how to take ownership of it, who to share it with. Again, because there was people would always come to me with their stuff, and I didn't know how to go to others. And I'm selective in who I share things with. I want to make sure I'm in a very trusted, safe space,
Right.
with the sacredness of our own personal situation and information. And that's the way I treated with others. So I was very careful in who I could. So I did that. It's years of feeling like I was walking through quicksand, and it really took a toll on me emotionally and mentally.
So
So
what
that
did
was,
you do to navigate that? Right. So you talk about self-care not being a thing. And that added on to the distress that you were feeling because you didn't take care of yourself and all that. So eventually, how did you navigate that in order to find some type of equilibrium, mental, physically, and spiritually?
so it, it took some time, but first of all, exercise became a thing. Now I have to say, along the process, in the process, there's external things that happened that sort of made it worse. Again, in the Catholic world, there's been a lot of crisis, scandal, right?
Yes.
And in the priest, you get kind of caught up in that, as a consequence. First of all, managing crisis and just the institutional crisis, but also then you become a target.
Right.
And I became that for people that were very angry with the church and angry with the institution that I was part of because there had been a lot of abuse. And so there was sort of like, well, he must be an abuser too.
Mm-hmm.
And that, with everything that I've already shared with you, that added to the pain and all of that. So there's some external elements that also just forced me into a darker place, and where like my whole life fell apart. And I'm not saying accused of abuser of children, which was the common thing in the church, but it's more just if this institution is infested and so
Let's be candid.
functional.
Let's be candid. When all those things were coming out, right? You guys were targeted. Absolutely. All the priests were targeted. People are looking at me, oh, you're Catholic. How could you continue to be Catholic? How could you continue to have faith in this institution? Right. But my faith is in my God, not in an institution.
That's
my
right.
faith is not in a person.
Yes.
So yes, I continue to have my faith because it's not based on people. People make mistakes. We're human.
Mhm.
Right. Those were awful, awful mistakes, and they need to pay for what they've done to people. But that doesn't take away my faith in my God and the way that I choose to practice.
That's right. Yes, it is. And that's been my own personal journey as well. But yes, if you were wearing a collar, well, then it was just natural that people were going to say,
Yes.
well,
So
that was hard. And then being in leadership roles and influential roles, there was twice where I got sort of caught where I became a blank, a target for people.
Listen, I feel that in a certain way and very differently, but being a nurse and just going through COVID, right? So as people were starting to have gatherings, a lot of nurses will tell you we were not invited to those things, and we were kept away because we were dealing with the sick people that were dying. So we love you and you're a hero, but don't come to my house, right? Don't come near me because you're dealing with that. So in a different way, but yeah, I can feel that pain because we felt it. Like, we're here to help you, just like I'm sure the Catholic priests are. We've spent our time in servitude to you guys, and now you're the first ones to turn on us without even knowing our stories, our backgrounds, our person, our spirits, without even knowing that. So I feel that. I feel that for you guys. Absolutely.
It was very hard. And again, I have a lot of admiration for people that continue to stay in ministry because it's a very challenging role. There's a lot of dysfunction around it that we could talk about.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it just, it's a very unique lifestyle. And again, so many friends and very admirable people that dedicate themselves to the service of God and others. But it really wasn't the right place for me. So going back to your question, is there was this internal journey that I was going through, but then it got intensified through external situations. And so I like to say that oftentimes transitions in life have a lot to do either with pain or with dreams. And mine was pain. And I got to the point where I resisted pain. I resisted the message of pain and the message of the mess. But I resisted the message of pain for a long time because I had to be strong and I had to make it work. But there came a point when, because of external circumstances and sort of drama and the political side of the institution, I got removed from a position. And I remember walking across this Roman plaza on a sunny spring day, seeing my shadow and thinking, why am I in this place where I never wanted to be? And it wasn't the first time I was in a place I didn't want to be. And I befriended pain in that moment.
That's deep.
Being released from this job was a big professional tragedy, in my view, right? With my identity and everything. But at the same time, it gave me a pass, or it gave me permission, a ticket to freedom. And befriending pain was part of that. To look pain in the face and say, I've been running from you for a long time because you're uncomfortable.
Right.
But you have a lot to teach me about my past, my present, and about who I am, and about my path forward.
Right.
So that began the moment of transformation.
Wow. I can visualize a picture of you walking and seeing your shadow. That's beautiful. Yes, and sometimes things happen to us for a reason, and they're negative things, right? And we look at them like, oh my God, what did I just lose? But you were able to take that, turn it around, and say, what did I just gain?
Yes, not at that moment. I have to admit that. Obviously, yeah. As I look back,
never in that moment, never for anyone. If they say that, I've never heard anybody say that. In the moment of that despair or that loss, do you feel that there was a greater purpose for this? It comes to you later.
Right.
It comes to you later.
But it's how we deal with it. And that's, for me, that is just so important. That's also what I've done in ministry for so long, and what I do now. But how we deal with it is very important. And now, in that place of negativity and bitterness or anger, whatever the negative emotion is, oftentimes we make decisions as human beings because we want to get out of the pain, or whatever it is. And we often make, that's not a good place or a healthy place to make decisions. So I've considered myself very fortunate because I didn't make any impulsive decisions through this whole process. I mean, from that moment forward, I was very intentional. I had to sit with things. I was also, about a year after this experience, then I went to inpatient care because I needed a safe place where I would get professional care and where I could also just consider my options in life and also look at my past. And I just needed a very non-judgmental place, and where I wasn't going to feel pressured that I had to continue ministry.
Right.
And so I had 4 months of inpatient care, which was then followed up by a year of weekly therapy and all of that. So it's a very deep journey, but also it helped me to reconcile a lot of things. And it helped me to come home to myself. Now, not everyone has the luxury to step away from life for 4 months.
Right.
I did. But what's important, I suppose what my message here is important is that when is making a huge decisions from a negative place is not a healthy thing to do, and it's important to invite others into our life in order to help us and support us in making the best decisions possible, so that down the road, like where we are now, that 5 years down the road, or 10 years, or maybe even just a year, that we can look back and say and be not happy with what happened, but content with the way that we dealt with it and the decisions that we made.
Absolutely. I always say perspective is very important, and how we can't change the things that happen to us. We can only look at it with a different viewpoint,
Right.
and see what we can do with that. You have to do something with the pain, right? You have to find purpose in that pain.
Mm-hmm.
And one important thing that you mentioned here is, again, something that I talk about is step one in the process is acceptance of what has happened to you.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to sit with that. So in those first few days, we go through the stages of grief and loss, whether it's of a person, a job, a way of being. That is all loss, and grief comes with loss. And that step of recovery, it's the last stage in the process of grief, but it's the number one stage in coming back from that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that you have to accept it. I say, okay, this happened to me. Okay. Right? I can do nothing to change that, but I accept that it's happened to me. When people stay in that denial stage and want to point fingers at all the bad things, and this is why all these external forces that cause this to happen, sometimes we have to look within ourselves and see, how do we contribute to this?
Yes.
Right? And what can I do to change that?
Mm-hmm.
Then moving into accept help, right? Knowing that we're not here and we can't do this alone.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get here alone. So what
Right.
makes us think that we can come out of it alone?
Yes.
Is to be humble enough to accept help from others, and help, whether it's professional mental help, whether it's a group, whether it's a book. Because for me, I had to go to books to start that journey, right? To heal myself. I had to go to other people. I was still going to somebody else who wrote a book. It was still an outside person.
Right.
So don't make decisions, right, in that stage. You are not positioned to make a really life-changing decision there. Small ones, baby steps.
Right.
And then move into self-help. So you talked about exercise and other things, right, that you did in order to get yourself back to self.
Exercise was my antidepressant for many years.
Right. Because it does what? It releases endorphins.
Right. What it did to me emotionally and mentally, and it helped me get through each day and to be in a better place emotionally and mentally and spiritually. And so it was one of the it was one of the only things I was really consistent at for a number of years, because I knew what it did for me. And it was always, getting myself to do it was always a challenge. But I always remembered. I remembered the results that it would give me, and not just the difficulty of going through it, but what it would do for me.
Absolutely. So that's important too, is knowing and acknowledging and recognizing tools that work for you. You got to have varied. For me, it was aromatherapy, or aromatherapy for me transforms me. And it's always been since a child. The smell of something will transform my mind into a different realm. Flowers, chocolate chip cookies. I always talk about that. That'll put me in a different place like that. So, knowing what works for you, exercise sometimes, it does. Once I get into a pattern, a rhythm, it makes you feel good. You completely change. But of course, it's releasing chemicals within your body, those feel good chemicals.
That's right.
So it does work. If you're physically unable to do exercise, there are still so many things out there. Meditation, yoga, other things that you can do that are not as physically taxing, that you can do to help yourself feel good. But you got to take care of yourself.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Nutrition is important. Music can be very helpful.
Music is another one.
right? There's so many different elements that can help us, but it's knowing what they are and then knowing what they do for us, and then being consistent in the process, which is hard for us as human beings.
Yeah, yeah.
I
And to
wanted
your point, of being, the lifestyle was a difficult one. I got to share with you something that a lot of people don't know about me, and it's that I considered the nunhood myself. As a teenager, I wanted to become a nun. I was really wanting to do that lifestyle, and it was nuns who told me, think about it. Take your time. I know that you feel very strongly about this. I wanted to be a missionary. I wanted to do all these grand things. And it was my mother who was like, first of all, selfishly, because she didn't want me to leave her, right?
right.
But she was like, you can help people right here. You don't have to go away to do that. You need to really, really think about it, because that life is a hard life, right? And you really got to think about that. And as time went on, I realized that it wasn't for me, and that I could still minister. I could still help people in a different way without that lifestyle, and still be a good Catholic, right?
Mm-hmm.
I could still do all those things,
Of course.
but it takes time. And sometimes we throw ourselves into it not knowing. And like you said, sometimes it takes a long time for you to realize this really wasn't for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
This isn't what God called me to do. I got to figure out what God really wants me to do, because I know
Right.
this is not it.
Yes.
So beautiful.
It's very challenging. And I think when I go back to when I left home, I was 18, and part of it was, sure, I wanted to do something meaningful in the world, but the fact is I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I said, well, I can do this, and it was sort of like, let's see what happens. but part of it was also, I think, just escaping from small town New England. I said, my world is going to be much bigger than this. So part of it was escaping. So not a good reason to make a decision.
Yeah, this is decisions.
Part of it was not knowing what to do, and so I'll latch onto something which gives me an identity, gives me a purpose, and it will look good. I'll be respected. Again, not all normal reasons, natural reasons, but not the deepest reasons why someone should make a decision.
Right. So Matthew, the question that I ask all my viewers when they come on my show, and I'd love to hear your perspective, is how do you view success? What does success mean to you?
Yes, the backstory on success is, I would look at my life now as not successful, if the way I viewed success before, years ago.
Okay.
Right? In other words, you do something, you're very good at it, that's success, right?
Right.
I was good at what I did, but I also made a lot of mistakes. I failed in the process, and I ended up making a huge life decision that didn't work for me. So that, in my books years ago, that would be defined as failure.
Right.
But success is my view of success has to do with aligning ourselves with the bigger picture of purpose and meaning, without getting too caught up in it, because as humans we can also get a lot caught up in what's my meaning, what's my purpose. I think we find our way to those answers step by step through life. Don't put yourself under so much pressure to figure it out. We're all trying to figure it out, but it's how we figure it out. I think that's success is the way we work our ways through these steps of finding the answers and turning failure into, or what we would call failures or mistakes, turning into great learning opportunities. And I think that's success. And the ultimate goal of success is that we can feel that we have a certain level of peace of mind and heart, and of happiness in this world and the next.
Absolutely. Amen. Amen to that. I love that, and it resounds with me. I love that definition. Truly resounds with me.
Thank you.
So, Matthew, how can people get a hold of you if they want to continue to speak with you, get you on their podcast? How do they connect with you?
Yes, podcasts, on the stage. I love to speak. With great opportunities. Also, a lot of my services are also individual coaching. So really through LinkedIn, Facebook, I'm Matthew Brackett, or at bracketalliance.com. Those are the easiest ways to find me.
Great. Thank you so much for coming on my show. Those of you out there, get a hold of Matthew. He's got so much and I need you back on my show, because there's so much more I want to talk about. There was a conversation you and I had about vision that I want to be able to bring back to this show. So thank you so much. And for my viewers, I will see you next time.
Hi, everybody. My name is Gabrielle Morales, and I am a recruitment coordinator for Be The Match. My journey with Be The Match actually began when I was only 9 years old. At that point, my 7-month-old baby sister was diagnosed with an extremely rare form of leukemia. Through the Be The Match registry, we were able to find a matching donor for my sister. And although a few months later, we lost her, her cancer was cured. Our family is so thankful for the additional months that we had with my sister. And ever since then, I've made a promise to myself to dedicate my life to helping children just like Isabella and helping families like ours by continuing her legacy. Hence why I now work for Be The Match. I love what I do so much, and I'm able to spread awareness about the huge need for more donors on the registry, especially those of diverse backgrounds. There is currently a huge disparity within the registry for minority patients, and we need your help. It is so simple to save a life and to be put on the registry. You can visit izzy'slegacy.com or text Izzy's Legacy to the number 61474 to start the registration process to be on the Be The Match registry, to hopefully be a life-saving match for a searching patient in need.